So if you can't focus for the next 10 minutes, then you can basically give up your business because focus is everything. Every single millionaire I know became a millionaire because of their ability to focus. So in the next 10 minutes, I will show you my exact formula to achieve unlimited focus. Imagine you could double your results, outcomes, and clients by just putting more focus in what you currently already do. So let's dive into it. And to really understand how focus works and how we can basically achieve unlimited focus, we first of all need to identify what it takes to achieve any goal. All right, let's say this is your goal. And achieving goals is basically just a chain and a path of decisions which needs to be made in the right order. All right. So let's say that your goal is, for example, making $1 million a month. In order to achieve this goal, you just need to act in the right way and you need to take the right decisions that will lead to the outcome. All right. And let's say this is the chain of actions you need to take to get to this goal. The problem is that in every situation you're in, you could basically take unlimited decisions and actions. You could decide to start an agency, you could decide to start a software business, and so on. And only a certain chain of actions and decisions will lead to the outcome. Right? The problem is in the beginning, you don't even know what the right actions and the right steps are. And on top of that, there are unlimited chains of decisions, right? You could take the decision of like start a consultation business instead of like an agency, for example, right? So this would be like the agency path. And this would be, for example, the consultation path. And the consultation path will lead to a whole different outcome than the agency path will be. So in the beginning, you don't know which path to follow and which actions to take. And therefore, it's super, super important to move with speed while also focusing on the things you do. So every single decision that you take right here, right here, right here, we need to take every single decision and every single action with hyper focus to make sure that it works out. But we also need to move with speed, right? Because maybe after 2 months, you realize that this chain of decisions won't lead to the goal, and then you need to adapt. But if you don't move with speed, then it will take you a year to make this decision and figure this out. Therefore, the actual formula we need to focus on is speed plus focus. We need to move with speed and we need to move with focus, focusing on every single decision action we take. Right? And therefore, this is so important to achieve the goal which you have. And focus is basically about two things. First of all, the vehicle which you use to get a certain action done, and the energy which you put into the vehicle to get a certain outcome. For example, you use your laptop to reach out to clients, right? So this is your laptop. Plus, we have your energy, which you put into the laptop, which you then use to get a certain outcome. For example, to get clients and make money. So focus is basically all about having the right vehicle to get a task done and then putting energy into this vehicle to get the outcome which you want, right? The problem is that the vehicle and also your energy is full of distractions, right? So we need to break down the vehicle and also your energy and figure out what is actually distracting you and what is holding you back from achieving unlimited focus. So what we want to do here is we want to first of all take the vehicle, for example, the MacBook or like the iPhone or whatever you use on a daily basis. It also can be your workplace, your office, or any other vehicle that you use to get outcomes done, right? And we basically need to identify the distractions which you have. And therefore, we need to understand how distractions and how habits work. Because whenever you get distracted, you basically just follow habits. If you, for example, get a push notification on your iPhone, you click on it because your brain instantly connects the trigger, so the notification, with the action, so clicking on it. And every single distraction and habit can be broken down in 3 different things. First of all, the trigger, then the action, and then the result. So you have a trigger, right? For example, getting a push notification or seeing a certain file on your phone. Then you do the action, you click on it, and this leads to the result, in this case, being distracted. So we first of all need to identify what is actually distracting us if we, for example, use the laptop as the vehicle. If you figure out that it's mainly, for example, YouTube or Snapchat, then we need to figure out how we can eliminate the trigger for those channels to basically not even come into the habit of clicking on it. Right? Because you cannot really get rid of the distraction. You can only get rid of the trigger and you can eliminate the trigger so the habit doesn't even show up in the first place. If, for example, you figure out that YouTube is distracting you, then we need to figure out what the trigger is. And in this case, the trigger would be the push notification, which you get, or like the email which you get whenever somebody uploads a video. And the goal here basically is to eliminate the trigger so that you don't even click on it, so you don't even do the action, and it won't lead to the result of being distracted. So Just figure out what is actually distracting you. I would make sure to track all the distractions which you see coming up throughout one workday and just write them down. And at the end of the day, you just go through all of the distractions which you notice throughout the day and figure out what their triggers are and basically eliminate them. And now we basically eliminated all the different distractions there are on our vehicle. So we can now focus on the second part, so our energy. And here it's basically the same thing. When it comes down to the energy which you put into the vehicle to get a certain outcome, you won't be distracted from external things, but you will be distracted from internal things, right? So here we need to take care of a couple of things to make sure that you can actually focus on the vehicle and get the outcome which you want to get, right? For example, getting clients and making money. And the first thing we have to take care of is our dopamine level. And dopamine is a hormone you feel whenever you are happy, right? It looks like this. So let's say you start your day right here at 8 a.m. and you finish your day at 9 p.m., let's say. And the problem is, for most people, their days look like this in terms of dopamine, right? They have like ups and downs. So, for example, they wake up and they go to Instagram and scroll through the reels, right? So they have their first dopamine spike right here. So they feel happy and their dopamine is really, really high and they feel really, really good. And then it drops because then they need to get out of the bed and they need to wash their face, for example. Right? Then it goes up again because they have like a big lunch, for example, and it's really, really high. Then it drops a lot when they get back to work and they, for example, want to do cold calls. Right? Then after 5 cold calls, they go back to Instagram and it peaks again. And the problem here is that you have like this up and downs. So whenever you go down from like a dopamine spike, you feel super unmotivated and you won't be able to focus, right? Because you're at a really low stage here of like dopamine level now, and you won't be able to get work done, right? And the problem is that these high dopamine spikes come from external things which are fake, right? For example, Instagram, social media, or like eating, for example. So we need to make sure, if you want to achieve unlimited focus, that we keep our dopamine level as low as possible. Right? So if you have like the same graph here, we need to make sure that we keep it as low as possible and that we keep the external dopamine completely away, right? And then we basically release our dopamine at the end of the day, like this. And here, so for the first 10 hours of your day, for example, you just focus on your work and you only get small dopamine spikes from the work that you do and the outcomes that you get. So you basically don't listen to music because music is one of the things that actually gives you high dopamine spikes. You won't use your phone, you won't use the social media, and so on, right? In the lunchtime, I also recommend you to eat, really small lunches, right? Because a big lunch will also peak your dopamine. And if you achieve to keep your dopamine low for the first 5, 6, maybe only like 3 hours per day, you will feel much more focused and you will be able to actually focus on the things you do, right? Because your dopamine haven't spiked just yet. And you can basically release it at the end of the day because sleep will reset your dopamine level to 0 again. On top of that, I also recommend you to meditate for at least 10 minutes a day. I always meditate in the evening and in the morning, and I basically just put on Brain FM music and basically release my brain. I don't think about anything. I just sit there in silence and basically just let my mind unfold. And if you do it once, it won't change your life. But if you do it every single day, it will connect with the dopamine loading module. So it will connect with, holding your dopamine and not releasing it so often throughout the day. And therefore, you will become more happy with yourself without these external sources of dopamine. And you will feel much more present, which also leads to more focus at the end of the day. The last thing which we have to implement in terms of your energy, which you put into the vehicle, is about your tasks and how you plan them. Because as I already showed you, we have the vehicle, which we use to get the tasks done, for example, the laptop. Then we have your energy, right? Both of them are now free of distractions. And the last thing is the task, which you do and then leads to the outcome, right? For example, the outreach, right? Like this. And here we need to make sure that we plan all the things that we want to do in a proper way so we can actually focus on them and we can get them done without overthinking. Because 80% of your focus problems are about not planning your weeks properly and not really knowing what to do. Because if you have a to-do list, for example, and you basically just write down, hey, outreach, then it's really hard for your brain to know what to actually do, right? Because outreach can mean everything. It can mean doing cold calls, sending DMs, you don't even know how many, and so on. So the first thing is that whenever you plan what you want to do, you are super specific about it, right? And you basically write down exactly what you want to do. For example, outreach to 5 people on Facebook, right? Like this. So we always want to clarify what exactly we want to do, how often we want to do it, like how much outreach, how many pages you want to read per day, and so on, and where, right? On Facebook, for example. Because with such a clear task, you know exactly what to do, right? And you won't fall into like the place of overthinking and not knowing what to do, because it's really, really clear what you need to do. And it's also connected to a number so that you know exactly, hey, I need to do 5, and then I can basically remove this task from my list because it's done. And if you just write down something like outreach, you don't really know like what the goal is. You don't really know when to stop or like where to start. So this is the first really important thing. On top of that, I recommend you to have 2 different places for tasks and things you want to do every single day. First of all, your calendar, which you basically use for the recurring events, for example, for the sales calls, for the team meetings, and any other recurring events, plus a to-do list, which you basically use to write down all the things which come up on a daily basis. For example, I don't know, fixing your website or building like a new onboarding process, whatever. So you use your calendar to basically track and manage the things which you do on a daily basis. And you use the to-do list to write down and manage the things which you do once in a while. Because at least for me, it becomes a lot easier when I have one source just for the things which I know appear every single day, and one source for things that I can track on a daily basis and just add things to it which appear spontaneously. I recommend you to focus on maximum 3 tasks per day. Because if you focus on more than 3 things beside of your calendar tasks, then you won't be able to get all of them done and you won't be productive. Another really important thing is to set limits for the things which you want to do, right? If you, for example, plan to build a new website and you tell yourself, hey, I have 8 hours to get the website done, then it will take you 8 hours, right? But if you tell yourself, hey, I have 1 hour to get it done, then it will take you 1 hour. So set aside fixed times to get something done and just make sure that you get it done within the time which you set, right? Because then you will get it done and you will be much more productive. Also make sure to plan your week ahead. So I always plan my week on the Sunday, which is tomorrow. So I basically write down exactly what needs to be done next week in terms of to-dos, so tasks. And I have a look at my calendar and I make sure that all of the things inside are still accurate. So do I still have all the team meetings which I booked a while ago? Do I have clarity on all my sales calls? Are like all my outreach goals inside of there, and so on. So we want to make sure that on every Sunday, you know exactly what you will do every single day of the week, right? To make sure that you hit all the deadlines and that you just have clarity on every single task. And you make sure that all of them are written down in this format right here. In the morning, I always have a look at my calendar and also my to-do list to just check in and see what needs to get done today, right? So that I start the day after the meditation with clarity and knowing exactly what needs to be done. And I also answer all the WhatsApp messages, emails, and SMS I get once per day in the evening, because one of the worst things I've noticed is if you wake up and you have 50 different WhatsApps, right? So make sure to answer all of them at a fixed time once per day, for example, at 9 p.m. in the evening, right? So you can start a day with, a clearer phone and no distractions. And if you implement all the things regarding the tasks, that you know exactly what to do for each task, if you implement all the things regarding your personal focus, and if you implement all the things regarding the vehicle that you use and you remove all the distractions, then it's basically impossible to not achieve unlimited focus, right? And if you then also move with speed, it's impossible to not figure out the right chain of decisions and actions, which will then lead to your end goal. And I hope you enjoyed this video. This is basically everything I know about focus and everything I believe you should know as well and implement as well to make this work. And I see you in the next one.